Saturday. I'm your host, Adrianne Hamilton Butler. You're listening to us now on the new WCEG network on WCEG Talk Radio.com. Make sure that you look at us live right now on your smart TV on the YouTube channel and the WCEG network. You can also follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter at WCEG_talk_radio or at WCEG network. We are a part of the worldwide community engagement group where we speak life into the community. And just a quick disclaimer, the opinions and the title and everything associated with this show, it comes from the host, which is me, and our guests. It is not a part of WCEG. Now this morning, I want to introduce our guests. I have Chama Ibrahim and Greg Loughlin. As you know, ONWARD is really about how do we navigate the challenges in our lives, the unexpected and the uncertain. And so really it's just a conversation among all of us, and hopefully you'll find this helpful for you. What we're talking about today is hope through faith. And I've invited a couple of people from different faith communities to talk about how their faith is tied to hope and how it has helped them both personally and professionally. So Chama, I want to start with you. Actually, I've known Chama for what now, about 5 years, Chama?
Yeah, almost. Good morning.
So we've known each other for about 5 years. We started at Forsyth County Family Haven, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Yes. And so Chama, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. You are the co-founder and executive director of Noor Family Services. What does Noor do?
Yes. Good morning, Adrianne. Good morning, everyone. Noor Family Services is a nonprofit organization located in Suwannee. We provide services to a victim and survivor of domestic violence. And our main focus on legal services, because most of our clients, when they're coming to Noor Family Services, they're looking for legal services. We provide temporary protection order, divorce, custody, child support. In addition to legal services, also we do ongoing case management with the client. We provide counseling, we provide the support group, financial assistance to the client, transportation. And our services, it's open up to everyone. We don't discriminate people who they come to us. We help men, women, we help Muslim, non-Muslims. So basically we don't discriminate anybody. And if somebody comes to us and speak different language, we do have a language line. And so basically anybody who experiences domestic violence, they can reach out to Noor Family Services, and all the services that we provide to our clients are free at no cost.
Okay, so just before we get to Greg, one question I do have for you. Why did you start Noor Family Services? Was it rooted in your Muslim faith, or was there something else that you saw in terms of a need for Muslim women?
I never thought that I would start Noor Family Services. This was like the least of the least to start an agency, because we work at the shelter and we know the shelter. You know, you need lots of staff, you need like a lot of strategic logic and everything. I never ever thought I would start like Noor Family Services. But the reason why I started, because of the client who they used to come to Family Haven, and I used to have with them a conversation one-to-one, either Muslim or immigrant. So basically those typical population felt there is no one understand the culture where they come. Yeah,
okay.
People that come at the shelter, they stay at the shelter. The shelter also provide similar services that Noor Family Service, but there is that gap about the culture. How can we, to understand? So when I used to have that conversation with the a previous client that used to tell me, you have to start like, this agency, what our struggle, you have to be our voice outside of the community. And they used to say, yes. But this, like, whenever I engage with more clients, especially from immigrant and refugee community, it's become more. I say, okay, it's a time. Maybe God put me in this road for some reason.
Yes,
and that's how I started advocating within my community about to establish a non-profit organization that help a victim and survivor of domestic violence, but should be like open up to everyone.
Yes.
Not only for the Muslim, not only for immigrant or refugee. And that's what we are doing now.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. So, Greg, you are the executive director of the Douglas County Task Force on Family Violence, but you were formerly of an organization called Men Stopping Violence. So again, a part of this movement to end violence against women. Tell us a little bit about your path and about the work you're doing now and how your faith is tied to this work.
Well, thanks, Adrianne, and thanks for having me on today and Chama on as well. So I'm a social worker by training and did different kinds of social work. But in 2001, I got connected with Men Stopping Violence and went through their year-long internship, which was a process of not only learning about domestic violence, but also holding a mirror up to ourselves as men and thinking about what are the messages that we've learned from the community that are affecting our relationships. And so, it started with a mirror up to ourselves and looking at ourselves first. And so I was fascinated and really moved by an area of social work that wasn't about fixing or helping other people. It was about working on ourselves and then working to change the community norms that support male violence against women. So, I was drawn to the work. I've been doing that work, particularly around engaging men to end violence against women for about 20 years now. And so a little bit about the Douglas County Task Force. We have a child advocacy center that works with kids who have been abused, as well as a sexual violence center and a domestic violence advocate to help people with protective orders. So I'm really on the other side of the fence a little bit now, and that we're working a lot more with survivors. I do think my faith has been a part of this in that, we're called to justice, and we're called to stand with people who have less power. And so it's interesting. I remember Reverend Dr. Marie Fortune, who is just an incredible leader in the field of domestic violence and faith. And she was talking to a pastor, and the pastor was encountering a family violence situation. And the pastor said, well, I don't want to show any partiality. I don't want to get involved. And Dr. Fortune's response was, well, what gospel are you reading? Because in the gospel, Jesus and his followers always tried to stay on the side of the people with less power or the people that were being oppressed. And so that really drives my work, and, I think at a deep level really pushes me forward.
I like what you said about justice, because I think, Greg, that that's not talked about as much in our faith. And really, it's our faith that kind of led to the whole social justice movement. Sham,
Yes.
Is justice also a part of the Muslim faith? You're on mute.
Sorry. Absolutely. Yes, justice is in our Muslim faith as well. Our religions encourage us to bring justice to people who are less powerless, like same thing what Greg mentioned. And we have, if we see something, we gotta make something think about it. In fact, they say if you see something wrong, you gotta change it, either with your mouth. In fact, they're giving us direction, either within your mouth. If you cannot do it with your mouth, you can do it with your hand. If you cannot do it with your hand, you can just like keep prayer. There are different ways that if we see something wrong, we gotta stand up and we gotta bring justice for people who are powerless. And basically that's what we are doing at Noor Family Services. You know, we try to bring the justice for these women or the men who are facing domestic violence, and get them their right, you know, what they need to be like one of our community, living with the dignity, basically.
So I like that because faith is active. It's not just sitting and believing. It prompts us to move and to act, to speak up on behalf of others. But I want to go back a little bit and ask you both, what led you to your faith? Was it something that you grew up with from childhood? Was there a conversion? What is it that led you to this point? I'll start with you, Chama.
Sure, absolutely. Yes, I born in Muslim country. My family are Muslim. My community is a Muslim. So my environment was like a Muslim, and that's how I grew up. Yeah, in the Muslim faith. Yes.
Where are you from, Chama?
I'm from Morocco.
Okay. So,
you know what is Morocco?
What was that?
Do you know what is Morocco?
I know where Morocco is. Yes, I do.
Okay.
And so in Morocco, is it mostly Muslim?
No, we have a Muslims. I can say like about 96 are Muslims, and we have Christian and we have Jewish. And in fact, we grow up around both, like the Christians and also the Jewish faith. And I still remember my mom used to do like doing her shopping or something like that from different faith people, like especially like, you know, with Jewish people and all these things. We have a big bazaar in Morocco, in Casablanca. So
yes.
I used to go with my mom to that shop to do her shopping.
So how long have you lived in the United States?
I came to the United States in 2000 after I graduated from my law school. I just came here just for vacation, but after that, I just like it. And then immediately I went to Georgia State to study English, because when I came to the state, I did not speak English at all. I just had like a couple of words, maybe like 6 words in English.
Okay.
Yes, because in Morocco we speak French as a second language. But so that's how my journey started. You know, come like, you know, for vacation as like, you know, as a graduation gift from my parents to come to the States. My brother was here at Georgia Tech, and then I like it. You know, I say, okay, let me take some classes of English, and then I start having like interest, like, you know, to stay here.
So when you made that trek from Morocco, which by the way, for everyone, it's in Africa. So when you made that trek from Morocco to the United States, how did you find support for your Muslim faith here?
At that time, I didn't know anybody, you know, like any Muslim group. After, like, you know, I went to the university, so there is a Muslim group. It's called the Muslim Youth at Georgia State.
Okay.
So I find that support, like, you know, I used to meet with them, especially like, you know, during Friday for prayer, and also during the holidays. So it was kind of support from that, from Muslim faith. Yes.
Great. And so, Greg, for you, again, is your Christian faith, Protestant Christian faith, was that something you grew up with, or was it a conversion?
No, I like what Chama said about her growing up in a community, and so I also grew up in a community. I'm Christian and Protestant and Episcopal, So I grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, but just as long as I can remember, we would walk to church. There were so many boys and some girls at our church. So there was a tree outside that we would all climb after church. My parents had bridge card games where people from church would come over. And so it was very much of a community kind of thing. And I think that is something important about, as we're talking about faith, just the community aspect of it. And
Yes.
something that there's so much in this culture, particularly US culture, that says it's all about the individual.
Yes.
And I think something about our faiths is saying, hey, but what about the community?
Right.
Hey, you're part of a community. I will say, so I grew up Episcopal. I think early on, my family was Catholic, and this was several generations ago. And my great-grandfather was from Ireland and ran a bar along with a hotel, and, tried to give money to the church that he was part of. And the priest said, I'm sorry, we're not taking your money because it's part of a bar. And so my great-grandfather was really hurt by that. And
Sure.
joined the Episcopal Church. On the other side, my wife, Natalie, is Catholic, and she grew up in Alabama, but several generations ago, she had a sick relative who was on his deathbed, and the only person that would visit him was a Catholic priest. And so because of that human connection, her whole family became Catholic. And so I think my point is, going back to community and back to, both community and then acts of kindness kind of seem really important to me in terms of bringing us into our faith and really rooting us where we are. Yep.
So you and I have something in common. So, I also grew up, well, kind of, but my dad was in the military and we wound up in Fayetteville, North Carolina. What church did you go to there?
So I went to Holy Trinity, and then I know you went to a church. There were 3 Episcopal churches
That's
in
right.
this little town.
Yes.
There was St. John's, there was
Yes.
Holy Trinity, and what was the name of your church?
So ours is St. Joseph's.
Okay, yeah.
St. Joseph's is one of the very few historical Black Episcopal churches. And my parents still go there to this day. So
Wow.
it's interesting, yeah, that we have that in common. And I think one of the things, we talked earlier this week, and one of the aspects of faith that we talked about, because ours is a liturgical community, is we talked about the comfort of tradition and of being a part of something where there's that ritual and that history, tradition. And I wanted to ask you, Greg, about the faith community, how it brings you comfort, and what aspects of Christianity, of being an Episcopalian, keeps you grounded and gives you a sense of peace.
So yeah, I really appreciate that. So I think, for those that don't know a lot about the Episcopal faith, when Adrianne talked about it being liturgical, it's based a lot on kind of common prayers. And so there's actually a book of common prayer that, most Episcopal services go according to this plan and according to these words. And so, my grandmother, my grandfather were part of these words and part of this flow, and I'm part of it, and it's something that I want to pass on.
Greg, you accidentally muted yourself.
Wow, sorry about that.
That's okay.
So these prayers, if you look them up, they're almost like poetry, in that they're in kind of an iambic pentameter or an iambic kind of rhythm, and so you can sit there and it's almost like kind of listening to ocean waves, that's going, and so there's a peacefulness to that, and then the words as well are comforting and surprising at points. And so I'll usually leave a service with a phrase or two kind of in my head. Interestingly, a lot of the prayer book came from the Church of England.
Yes.
And so there is, a very kind of English-centered, Anglo-centered kind of piece to it, but the Episcopal Church is also opening that up some. There are more prayers coming in from New Zealand. There are more prayers coming in from women, and that are centering women's voices and other things. And so it's a long process, but I also delight when, and I'll share a prayer later with you that is kind of surprising, but new voices come in that keep that liturgy or that kind of rolling comfort going.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so Chama, you talked about growing up in Morocco and your faith experience there. Tell us a little bit more about what Morocco was like growing up as a young Muslim girl, your experiences, and what you found comforting in that community.
Yeah, Morocco is a beautiful country. I will suggest to everyone to visit. It's in North Africa, close to Spain. When I grew up, as any child, you go with your parent to the mosque. For us, it's called a mosque, like kind of church. It's called a mosque.
Yes.
Over there, where you meet like your friend. And you have a group of people and the group of your friend that you would like to go to that specific mosque, and you are looking forward for it for every Friday, basically.
Yes.
We have it like on Friday. We do our prayer on Friday. And that faith, like, it make you to build up that relationship, when you go to that mosque, you like that peace, you see your friend, you see like the community that you share the same value, basically the people that we used to be like with, either from my parents' side or from family side in general, you share the same value. So this value that teach you at the early age that you have to help people, you have to support other people, you should not to discriminate people. Even in Morocco, we have different regions. We have like a certain area where we can say like kind of African American, like Saharas over there, and then on the top you have Tamazigh, and also like you have like different ethnic people with different language as well, and you find all these people like they share the same religion, is just like different,
Yeah.
they have the same faith but different language, different ethnicity. So that's the environment, like what I grew up in Morocco, and I am trying, like it's not I'm doing the same thing with my children to let them, like this is the value why we grow up with. We should not, like to discriminate. We should, like respect yourself, so people that can respect you. It has to start with you first. So
Absolutely.
trying, like to bring like all this value that I grew up in Morocco, and also my parents taught us at the early age to pass it around to our to our children.
Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing that. And so let's talk a little bit about the hope that our faith brings to us. We've talked a little bit about justice, we've talked about community, but I think one of the important aspects of faith is hope, especially when we look at the society that we're living in. When we're looking at the news, we're looking at what's happening in Ukraine, we're looking at what's happening with our economy, and the fact that rents are so high now that many middle-class families really can't afford to live. And then looking at the work that you do with survivors of violence, where do you find hope? How does your faith give you hope? Greg.
So, we just got done with Easter. I guess we're still in the Easter season, but
Yes.
The central story of Easter is Jesus dying and then being reborn or rising from the dead, which, you know, you've got to admit is a hard, you know, I mean, is quite a story to try to swallow, you know, in terms of just, wow, how did that happen? But I think, you know, a central message to me there is that, you know, God will stop at nothing, you know, God's love will stop at nothing, you know, to be with us. And so even death, you know, God's love won't stop with that. And so that's a mystery. That's not something I can really explain. You know, some days it's hard to believe. I mean, we see awful things. Chama, I know you see awful things. Adrianne, I know you see awful things. And it's hard to believe some of the scriptures saying it's going to be okay. You know, that the lame will leap like deer. Yes. You know, and it's really hard to believe with the things that we see, but I think what alternative do we have? You know, at least in my, you know, given the story, given the faith tradition that we're in, I don't have an alternative, frankly, that I could continue to go on with. And so, you know, I do believe, I can't prove, but I do believe the central tenet that God will stop at nothing, you know, in God's love for all of us. So that's a piece for me.
And I love that you included that word love, because I think, you know, a lot of times when we hear, especially in the Christian faith, we hear about righteousness and sin. And so sometimes we beat people up with that. They don't understand that all of this is born out of God's love for us. He doesn't want anyone to perish. He wants us all to have everlasting life and to have life in its fullness here. And so I know as Christians, that's what gives us hope, is the fact that God loves us and he loves all of us. Chama, in the Muslim faith, tell us a little bit about hope and what that word means to you and how it's lived out in your faith.
When we look at the word hope, we see it has only 4 letters, you know, hope. But it's meant a lot for so many people who are in difficult situation. And I'm seeing that with our client that we serve. And all the time, I try to put indirectly, you know, my faith that everything it will be okay. Something it happened for a reason, but it will be okay. Like as you mentioned, like now, like with Ukraine, you know, like what's going on in the world. You know, there is a hope, and I never ever like, you know, give up that hope. And even our slogan for our agency, it's hope. Love, hope, dignity. That's what we have. Like, you know, we put it all together, you know, for that purpose. So we want to give like that hope to everyone. And we should to have that hope, because if we don't have that hope for the future, there is nothing that you stop over there. We have like, you know, to be optimistic. We gotta do something. And I'm sure after like, you know, when it's rain, there is a sun.
Yes.
And that's the way how I look at the hope, and I see it from from under my faith. You know, there is all the time in difficult time. It's okay. Take a deep breath. It will be okay. And don't give up. There is something, it's come up right. It's not all the time. There is a hope in the life.
And I love what you said about the fact that after the rain, there's the sun. And that's really what hope is all about, is seeing that even in the most difficult times, that there was something good ahead, that there's a lesson to be learned, and that there was something good that will come out of it. And so that leads me to asking you both kind of a personal question. And that is, when you reflect on your life and the personal challenges that you've encountered, how has your faith and your faith community supported you in navigating a specific crisis in your life? Chama?
Sure. That you bring me, I don't know what the right word to say it, but in 2008, just a couple of days before my graduation, I lost my mom. My mom supposed to come to attend my graduation with my sibling. And that tragic thing, it was like very difficult for me. It was very hard for me. And I know I did my study abroad in London on January, and I said there is no need to go to Morocco. It was in London, it just was only like 2 hours. I said, okay, the reason I'm going to Morocco to see my mom, but my mom, she's coming for my graduation. But unfortunately, the way that I looked at it, it was not the right, you know. It's sometimes it happens, you know, like, you know, in our life. But the way how I cope with that tragedy, for me, I just keep praying all the time, and I listen to Quran, which is a Bible for you guys, and that it helped me to come out of that difficult time. And I still sometimes I still have it, like, you know, I carry it with me sometimes.
Yes.
But that it was very hard, you know. I used my faith at that time to help me to look at the bright you know, future. I felt like, you know, she's watching me, she is seeing me.
Yes.
I'm going, like, you know, from the graduation, all these things. So it's faith, it helped me a lot to come up across of that situation. But you know, without my faith, I couldn't, you know, done it, you know. So I still, like, you know, that's one of the difficult time, like, you know, in 2008. Yes.
Thank you for sharing that, Chama. Thank you. And Greg, what about you?
Yeah, you know, I had when our son was born about 14 years ago, we have one child. And so he was born. And then at the exact same time, I switched over in work to doing fatality review. And so, you know, we have this son who's kind of keeping us up. And then my day job all of a sudden was reviewing domestic violence homicides. And I got deeply depressed, you know, kind of during that period, and just with, you know, both the child, you know, and then also the fatality review. And, you know, then I was seeing a doctor who put me on, I think, the wrong medicine. And so it was just a really, really awful period. And it's interesting, I don't know that I can explain how I got out of that. I mean, I do think faith was part of it, but I also think even when we can't explain kind of what's going on, God is still working, you know, or helping us. Robert Bly's got a poem, it's called The Eel in the Cave, but he talks about even in the dark, someone's hitching the horses. And so that may not make sense kind of by itself, but I think even in the midst of a situation that I couldn't get out of and couldn't explain to you how I got out of it, you know, I still eventually got out of it. So I think that's part of the mystery of faith too. And you know, I can't always explain what happened or why, but it was part of the journey, and I believe part of getting me out of that hole.
Yeah, and I think I love how you said that it's part of the journey, because faith is a journey. There are things that happen to us that grow us and change us, and I believe really make us better human beings. You know, Greg, you asked me before we started, would I share something from my own faith experience? And I don't share this with a lot of people, but in 1997, we had a son named Matthew. We had named him already, but he was stillborn on his due date. And so he was a full child. And I remember that people from our church came immediately to the hospital once they heard, and that changed me. It made me realize that I needed God and I needed my faith community to move forward. I don't think that I would have been able to make it. That following Sunday was actually, I think it was Palm Sunday. And so my mom came from North Carolina. She flew to Minnesota to be with us. And she said it was just amazing to see the number of people that hugged us and supported us. And so I believe that it was through this faith community and God's love and support that I was able to move on. And like you said, overcome depression, overcome a feeling of, will we, my husband and I, be able to have kids again, which we did the next year. But your faith community is really what supports you when you're going through crisis. And Chama, you with the loss of your mother, I'm sure that you felt that you feel God's love even when things happen that hurt you. To your core, God's love is present. And so I want to now flip it on the other side of how you take this to the people that you're serving, the families that are suffering because of violence. How do you comfort them and use your faith to specifically wrap your arms around them so that they feel supported and loved? Chama, you can answer.
Sure. The way how I do it, like all the time, I listen to the client. I give them that opportunity to listen to them. And I take it where I say, there is a hope. As we are talking about, I encourage them that there is a hope. You should not to give up, because the women that come to us, they're totally lost the hope. They're still like, I have been in this situation for so many years, no going back and forth, going back to the abuser, no thank it's up. This is my last thing, I'm just trying. So we just take it like one step at one time. So basically, we just talk to them, listen to them, and we give them that hope, and they should not ever to give up. And I told them, like, I said that to several clients, remember this thing, it will be just a memory for you. And that's what, in fact, some of the clients that come to us after, because domestic violence, it's not a switch. You can fix it right away. It's take with those clients that we provide them, counseling. Also, that's another thing that we provide to our clients, that it helped them a lot beside me. And when they're talking to me, or talk to the case manager. So after couple of months or after a year or something like that, one of the clients come to me and say, you are right. I cannot believe where I am now. Look, now I can have I'm having apartment, I'm driving, I'm having a job, my kids are stable. So this is what I use, this tactic, that what I have of my belief, I try to use it with the client, and all the time I encourage them, never ever give up. There's a hope. I know it's difficult time for you. You are not the only one in this situation. Believe me, there is so many women in the same situation or worse, but they are putting it together, and we are here to support you. If you need anything, we are here. Please call us. What can we do? Also, we do follow up with the client. How can we help? Tell us. And some, as I said, some of them they just want to talk. I just listen. I
exactly
just an ears, to listen. And by the time they say, oh, I'm so sorry, I was talking too much, and all this, they say, no, I am here to listen to you. That's why you are calling me. And you feel that trust, when you talk with the client, you build up that trust with the client, and you try all the time, as I say, hope. I believe in the hope. So basically, yes.
I like how you said listen. I think that's so important, listening to people in times of crisis, because they really just want to talk. And so with Greg, as you were in Men Stopping Violence, and even now in the work that you're doing in Douglas County, how do you bring your faith to people in particular who are either victims, or when you're talking about men stopping violence, maybe men perhaps who have been even perpetrators of violence. How do you bring your faith to helping someone individually?
I mean, that's a great question. I think, for a lot of it, particularly working with survivors, my own faith just reinforces how important somebody else's faith is, and so I think, like Chama was saying, to listen and to really respect somebody else's faith as a centerpiece of their coping and their hope, and to really respect that. I really don't, push or talk, push my faith at all, kind of, on somebody. Actually, I made a mistake one time of a coworker of mine was doing fatality review. And so I knew it was a tough job. So I gave her a book of common prayer, which sounds nice, but afterwards I was kind of like cringing a little bit. Like that's not, she didn't ask for that. And so, I'm really careful about kind of using my faith to kind of keep me whole, because that's how I can be most useful to somebody else. And then also see their faith as a centerpiece for them, but not really try to bridge that. I will say, in working with men, it's a little bit different, because I think no boy grows up and says, wow, when I grow up, I really want to be an abuser. Or I want to be somebody that's pushing my family and my children, our family and children, away from me. And so I do think there's a spiritual crisis within men as they're coming to grips with kind of what what we've done and the effects on others. And if my whole manhood is based on I'm a man because I control women and I control children and I'm more important to them. And Reverend Pat Merchant, who was on Men Stopping Violence board, said it almost feels like a death when you give up that kind of sense of yourself, like I'm supposed to be in control, and then you let go of control. For a man that's trained that that's what they're supposed to do, it almost feels like they need to die and be reborn.
Yeah.
And so I do talk with men more about faith, just in a sense of, kind of what's your higher power? What are you going to call on when it feels like death, because you're no longer in control? The control you thought you had, you really don't. And so I do think there's a way of drawing on that, more directly with men. So,
I heard both of you kind of talk about listening to people, and kind of that being available, and also meeting people where they're at, right? Not imposing our faith, but allowing people to explore it on their own and being available. So I want to pivot that to prayer, because that's really God listening to us. How does prayer play a role in your faith? And do you exercise the power of prayer in your faith, Chama?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Very interesting question. Yes, the prayer is a tool power personally for me. And I try to pray every day. It's not like only on the difficult time. We got to remember God in the good time and bad time. So basically, I pray like every day, and I thank God, like, for everything that I have, especially when you hear other cases with the people that you're working with, you thank God what you have. You have a roof, you have a food you have a food on your table, you are able to walk. It's like so many things that we have, and we have to be grateful for it. So my prayer and my religions, it helped me to stay in this, be inside in this area. And it's kept me also like keeping more prayer, to get like more blessing. That's the way. And especially like, like now is the month of Ramadan for us. It's a religion holiday for us. There is more prayer. There is more like reading the Quran. There is more approach, to God. And especially during these last 10 days of Ramadan. So the prayer, it has like a big tools on my life and changing my life.
And so, Greg, what about you and the power of prayer? How does your faith activate prayer? And is that a practice that you use for yourself?
I do. I wish I did it quite as regularly as Chama does. I aspire to that. I think often prayer kind of either comes through church services or spontaneously. And I wish I could credit who said this, but there are two kind of major types of prayer that this person said. There's thank you, and help me, help me, help me.
Yes.
And there may be some others like help them or help us, but I think often when I'm in a situation, I'll pray, thank you, or help us, in other kind of words. So I do think, like Chama said, this liturgy that we talked about, these prayers that we do kind of day in, week out, through the good times and bad times, get kind of stuck in my head, and
yes.
Words will come out kind of when I need them. We had a priest at my former church, Holy Comforter, who at the end of every service, she would do the blessing of St. Clair, which was live without fear. Your Creator has made you holy, has always protected you, and loves you as a mother.
Yes.
Go in peace to follow the good road, and may God's blessing be always with you. And she would say that at the end of every single service, just kind of the audacity of saying, live without fear.
Yes.
God's made you holy.
Yeah.
God's always protected you and loves you with a fierce and unending parenting love, is just something that, I'm scared a lot of the times, but then I'll think back to Reverend Alexis saying, live without fear, and just kind of the audacity of that. And so that's how prayer works for me a lot, where, the words that have become ingrained will come out and help to comfort me or settle me or help me, get perspective.
I'm holding on to that one, live without fear. That is awesome. I love that. And so we have a few more minutes. One of the things I wanted to ask you both, from your sacred text, is there a verse or a phrase that means something to you, that you hold on to, that you meditate on frequently? Chama.
Absolutely, yes. There is one phrase in the Quran. It said, it may be that you hate something while it's good for you, and it may be that you love something while it's bad for you. So all the time, I keep these verses with me. Sometimes I'm excited about something, but it didn't come up or something like that. I say, okay, for some reason. And all the time I return to these verses in the Quran. We don't know. Only God knows. So all the time I use this one. You hate something while it's good for you. And then you say you love something, but bad for you. So whatever it's come up, I say it's for a reason. And I use this one all the time.
I like that. And Greg, what about you?
So there was the one I just shared, it's more, I kind of like go fishing through the Book of Common Prayer to like try to find a phrase that really helps me make sense of what's going on. One that I've been thinking about recently, it's actually part of a burial process, but the priest says, we do not live to ourselves and we do not die to ourselves. If we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. So happy from now on are those who die in the Lord. So it is, says the Spirit, for they rest from their labor. And so, I'm not suggesting, I want to die or other people want to die, but I think that whole thinking of, if something, and this is kind of similar to what Chama was saying, if something good happens or if something bad happens, either way, we're God's, we're part of God's plan. And so that kind of helps me stay a little bit, like there's certain things in my life, I don't know if they're going to succeed or if they're going to fail. I don't know what's going to happen, and so that's comforting to me to think about whether we live, whether we die, whether we succeed, whether we go down in flames, what have you. All of us are in nonprofits, either way, God's with us. So that's one I've been thinking about a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it kind of leads me to a prayer that we shared with our sons as they were growing up. We would pray this with them, and it's Joshua 1:9. And it speaks to what you were just talking about, how God is with us. It's, have I not commanded you to be strong and of good courage? Be not afraid, neither be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And that's comforting to me. And especially, and I know you both have children. I think your children are still living in the home, but my children are out of the home now. And it's comforting to know that even when they're not with us, God is with them. And so he's with them and protecting them. And that gives us, my husband and I, a sense of peace. So we're closing. I wanted to know if either one of you had any other comments or anything you wanted to share about faith and how it helps you just in your daily lives, or even as I talked a little bit about my children, how it's being passed on to your children, the next generation. Chama?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I mentioned to you earlier, that whatever that my parents, the value they raised, when I was like a child, I'm trying to pass it to my children. And that's what happened. Like, the value of my religion, I'm trying, to give it to my children. Like, for example, like this is the month of Ramadan. My kids, they're fasting and they're going to the mosque, and they have the youngest one who's 12. Sometimes I wake him up before the sunrise so he can eat something, and sometimes I don't. And the next day he's like upset, and he said, no, today I want to fast. Why you didn't wake me up? I said, well, it's, you have like exam. I bring someone excuses or not. I don't, I don't want to force him, but I just to make sure that he's getting this value that he can use in the life, and both of them, they can be respectful to the other people and respectful to the other religions. That's the way, just like doing my best with that.
And so it's important to you, and it seems now that it's important to your sons to be a part of the Muslim faith. And so for Greg, what about you? And your son?
Well, I'm trying to, he goes to church. In part, he likes to be with the other kids, but, I like taking him to the liturgy just so he starts to get the feel of that rhythm. And, I know when I'm gone, that rhythm will keep going. And so I think that's comforting, and that's somewhere I hope that he can go for solace.
Yes.
And again, the whole message or the experience of church as a community, I know we talked about this at the beginning, but I just want to reemphasize, in this culture that says it's all about the individual, it's all about individuals, it's all about picking yourself up by the bootstraps, it's all about getting a gun and protecting yourself, there's a counter message, in faith communities that it's about the community, and we are a community, and the community matters too. The common good matters as well.
Absolutely.
And so, I think that's a really much needed voice in our culture right now, because it's getting drowned out in so many places. And so, I hope our faith communities are able to keep the common good and community alive as well.
Thank you so much for that. And I think that's a great note to end on, Greg, is building the beloved community. And that's what I too hope that we're doing through our faith. Thank you, Chama and Greg, for joining me again on Onward. You're listening to Onward on the new WCEG network on WCEG Talk Radio.com. I hope you'd enjoy the show, and I hope that you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram on @WCEG Network or at WCEG_talk_radio. We are a part of the worldwide community engagement network where we bring life to the community. Thank you, everyone, and have a fantastic Saturday.